My name is Valerie. I lived in South Tampa, Zone C. On paper, it seemed safe. With Zone B hugging me on 3 sides, I wasn't concerned. I've lived here for over 25 years, and hurricanes were part of life. They came, they went, and life continued. I was prepared. A week ahead, I had already filled the gas tank, bought enough supplies, and boarded up the windows 3 days before the hurricane was predicted to hit. There was no rush or panic, just routine. Family and friends kept texting, telling me to leave, but I brushed it off. I didn't need to hear their fear. I know what I'm doing, I repeated to myself, convinced I was making the right choice. Even my neighbor, a seasoned meteorologist at ABC, reassured me that we'd be fine. That confidence made me stubborn, almost proud. I stood there in my kitchen, looking out the window as the day turned to dusk, feeling like I had everything under control. But as the evening crept in, something shifted. The sky turned a haunting shade of gray. It wasn't the usual overcast, but a thick, eerie blanket that settled over the city. The wind whispered at first, then started to howl. It was the kind of sound that crawled under your skin. My stomach churned with a mix of dread and anticipation. Still, I pushed it aside. I'd weathered hurricanes before. This one's no different, I told myself. But a small voice in the back of my mind whispered otherwise. The winds were steady, but when the first gust hit, it was like a slap to the face. I felt my heart race. My dogs, sensing the change, began pacing nervously, their ears pinned back and tails low. I tried to calm them, but my own unease was growing. I stood by the window, watching the palm trees outside bend unnaturally in the wind. A few branches snapped off and tumbled down the street. The sound was sharp, like bones breaking. The sky darkened quickly, and suddenly, the rain came. Not a gentle rain, but sheets of water slamming into the house like it had a grudge. The wind, it wasn't just blowing, it was screaming. It clawed at the house, rattling the windows, making the walls creak. My heart dropped. It was nothing like I had ever experienced before. I grabbed my dogs and moved to the garage. I thought it would be safer there, away from windows. The garage was dark and cold, and I could hear the hurricane growing angrier outside. It felt like a living thing, like it was hunting. Each gust of wind made my heart pound faster. I tried to focus on staying calm, but the fear had already settled deep inside me. The roof creaked above us, and for the first time, doubt began to creep in. Then the roof started to cave in. It wasn't a sudden collapse, but a slow, agonizing process. I saw the ceiling bow, a large crack spreading like a spiderweb. Instinct kicked in. I rushed to hold it up with my hands, as if I could stop the inevitable. My dogs huddled at my feet, whining in fear. I was drenched in sweat, muscles straining, my heart racing faster than the winds howling outside. At one point, the garage door flew open, and the hurricane burst in like an uninvited guest. The rain soaked everything, and the wind whipped at my face, cold and relentless. I tried to close the door, but it was no use. The hurricane had taken over. I retreated to a corner, covering my dogs with my body, praying harder than I had ever prayed in my life. Hours passed, but it felt like days. Every second was a battle to survive. I wasn't thinking about the house anymore. I just wanted to make it through the night. The hurricane had become a monster. Each gust felt personal, like it was deliberately trying to tear us apart. I screamed in frustration, tears welling up. How had I been so naive? I thought I was invincible, but in that moment, I felt smaller than ever. The world outside was in chaos, and my once safe home was now a prison. The hurricane raged on, each hour dragging on for what felt like an eternity. I held onto the roof for as long as I could, but eventually, exhaustion won. I collapsed onto the floor, cradling my dogs, praying that the walls wouldn't come down on us. Every muscle in my body ached, and fear gnawed at my insides. I was no longer in control. Nature was. In the early hours of the morning, there was a lull. The wind died down, and for a moment, there was silence. The air felt thick, heavy, like something was about to happen. I crawled out of the garage, my legs shaky, and stepped outside. It was surreal. The sky had cleared, revealing a calm, starlit sky. But the ground beneath my feet was a war zone. Debris was scattered everywhere. Shingles, branches, pieces of homes that had once stood proud. The street was unrecognizable, as if someone had taken a giant eraser and wiped away everything familiar. I looked at my home. The roof had caved in on one side, and the windows were shattered. It was broken, but still standing. For a moment, I felt relief. The hurricane had passed. The silence that followed was eerie, almost deafening. My home, what was left of it, was barely standing. The roof had completely caved in, and the walls were cracked. It was a shell of what it once was. I felt a lump in my throat as I looked around. My neighbor was gone. Trees lay across the streets, houses reduced to piles of wood and debris. The air smelled of salt and destruction. I dropped to my knees, exhausted, as the realization hit me. Everything I had worked for, every memory I had built in that house, was gone. The hurricane hadn't just taken my home, it had taken a part of me. But as I looked down at my dogs, alive and safe, I realized something important. I still had them. I still had my life. And as broken as everything seemed, I wasn't alone in this. My neighbors would rebuild, just like me. The hurricane had left its mark, but it hadn't taken everything. As I stood amidst the wreckage, something in me broke. Not just the house, not just the life I thought I had under control, but my pride, my stubbornness. Everything I had once believed about my own strength and self-sufficiency had been swept away like the debris scattered across my yard. I knelt down right there, the weight of the devastation pressing on my shoulders, and I finally let the tears flow. I had tried to handle everything on my own, thinking I was smart enough, strong enough, prepared enough. But the truth was, I had been so wrapped up in my own pride, so convinced I could weather any hurricane, that I had forgotten the one who controls the wind and the waves. God, I've been so foolish, I whispered, my voice cracking. I thought I didn't need you. I thought I could do this all by myself. But look at me now. I'm broken, Lord. I've been a sinner, prideful, thinking I had it all figured out. I'm sorry. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but the tears kept coming. I had lived through the hurricane, but the real hurricane had always been inside me. The hurricane of thinking I could handle life on my own, without God. Please, forgive me, I prayed, my voice shaking. Forgive my pride, my arrogance. I don't want to live like this anymore. I need you, God. I need your mercy, your guidance. I looked around at the devastation, at the homes torn apart, at the lives that had been shattered, and my heart ached not just for myself, but for everyone who had been affected. I knew I wasn't alone in this. So many people were hurting, lost in the aftermath of this hurricane. God, take care of everyone who went through this, I prayed, my hands shaking. Protect them, comfort them. Give us the strength to rebuild, not just our homes, but our lives. I trust you now. I'll never again try to face life without you. I had survived the hurricane, but more importantly, I had found something much deeper: humility. I was no longer the woman who believed she had all the answers. I was torn, humbled, and fully surrendered to God. For the first time in a long time, I am not afraid. I know that no matter what hurricanes came in the future, I won't face them alone.